Alright, welcome back everyone. Morphs here again, and this time we will check on wiring connected elements. So we will create a control panel to move the morpher. Alright, so to change the values here, because it's really a pain to do it manually. Here we will create some controlling elements. Imagine that we are creating joysticks to drive multiple morphs at a time. So we will start with the Joe area, and for that now my toggle layer explorer is open. So here we have layers. A few layers are created. We have this thread mesh, but we also have the rig and bones layer. So let me make that visible and turn off thread mesh for now. The reason is I will just move this Joe mesh. If you remember, we created this a couple lessons ago, and our goal is to open this up and manipulate it and affect the movement of the Joe. So for that we need to go to the front view, and actually I can close this layer explorer for now and go to the front view and create a rectangle. So a rectangle that's fairly small. It's a 6x6 rectangle. So let me press right click, go to the modify panel and check the sizes, and it should be 6x6. And we don't need to render the wire, so in my case it was left checked. So what's next? The location of this is not that important, but it is a little bit easier if we put it somewhere on the grid. Right now the grid resolution is a bit too coarse, so to change that is shift and right click and go to grid and snap settings and choose home grid, and from the home grid let me change and update this value to 1. So right now the grid resolution is 1 centimeter, so each line represents 1 centimeter as a unit. Okay, and the bottom area we can change these values to a full 45, for example, and 143 maybe, 143. Okay, that's nice. So it is a little bit easier to recognize where this item are. So it is a 6x6 centimeter square. Okay, now this will be a frame. What we need to do is we want to put in other details. I like to create a kind of a crosshair for that. A corner radius that's fairly small can add some good look. And also, once you have this corner radius, once we have the sizes adjusted, then we can convert this into an editable spline. And the reason we're doing that, because we can select segments. We can actually copy segments, like holding down the shift key, copy and drag. And if you want to make sure that this newly created segment is dead center to this original, we can use the align button. So quick align, and clicking on the model itself, it will put this section, put this segment into the center. So shift and drag, that's a copy. Shift and A, that's actually the hotkey for quick align, and then clicking the model itself, and now everything is centered. So we have this kind of a crosshair center in the middle. It's easier to recognize if we made a movement on the joystick. Now this is just a frame, but we definitely need to create the middle part. Probably a different color is a little bit better, a little bit brighter color, maybe this bluish. Okay, it's easier to read for the eye. And we need to create a circle, and the circle is placed inside the model. You can do it by holding down, pressing just the S, the shift key, to turn on the snap, and drag and make sure that it's about 2 centimeter diameter, so that means 1 centimeter radius. And because I was tweaking with the segment and resolution, I have a little bit coarse looking circle, so the steps should be about default is 6. So in this case we can keep it at 6. That's not a problem. Interpolation, steps 6, going back. Okay, of course visibility, so change the look, maybe this kind of a purple. Okay, something else, maybe the yellow one. I don't really like to use the yellow because it's conflicting with other colors like the light colors, but on this particular background it was quite readable. Okay, so here we have this, and let me move forward, but before we are moving forward we need to link the two. So right now the frame is independent, so when we are moving this controller panel, there's a chance this guy is just left where it is. We want to bond the two, so for that this circle is selected, and we're going to the select and link, holding down left mouse button. It's hard to do it because right now we have only wires. Alright, so you have to accurately click, hold, and drag and move over the line. Okay, so it's not a body, it is a line, so you have to meet with the outline or any indicator line, and then you can make and perform the link. If you want to check, just go to move mode, select the rectangle and move it away, and if it drags the circle, that's fine. Of course the circle is free to move, so that is a cool little thing. Now because it is a joystick, we want to restrict the movement of this, but how to do it? So first of all, whenever you moved it and you want to get back to the original state, you want to find this center. Now we don't use the align all the time, we can do it somehow differently. Now let me explain. Because this one is linked to the frame, we can switch the move mode to parent mode, and in the moment when you switch parent mode, these values are representing the offset. So because when this circle was attached to the rectangle in an initial position, these values are just showing what changed since we moved the model. Okay, so if you go in here and press a right click, these values will zero out, so you can walk around, and if you are in the parent mode, anytime you are selecting the joystick and going in down here, you can individually reset values. Okay, it's very important for animation because you want to create 0 keys to start a movement and or reset a movement on the go. Alright, so that's a nice touch. Where to go? So it's right now we have a good relation, but the problem is that it's still not respecting the boundaries. So we have to teach this circle a lesson. We want to restrict them, and for that we need to go to the motion panel, and actually it is a positional type of restriction, so we are reducing the range of motion of this circle. For that we will apply a controller. It's kind of a relation, and we can't really do it in one step, so we have to go and select the rotation we want to restrict. So position and open it up, and X position, I don't know which one is the horizontal or the vertical, so I have to check it, but checking on the go will help to make the settings. So X position, that's the top one, is selected. I guess it's the horizontal movement, so assign controller, and the movement we need, the type of restriction is called float limit. So float limit, pressing OK, and now we have a value limit. Now this means 1000 units and negative 1000 units. So one direction is up, is positive, bottom is negative. So I guess it will be a horizontal, but let me check that. So 3 to positive and -3 to the negative side, and voila, we have an X position restriction along the x-axis. So plus 1, 2, 3 and minus 1, 2, 3. Of course, we have no restriction yet along the y-axis. Alright, so float limit control, this one is done. Let me close this. I want to go back to the original state, so I can go down, press right click on the spinner icons, and now we have everything back in place. And here we go. As you see, we have a plus sign now. So there is a limited controller, and we have the limits. So we have the upper limit, lower limit, whatever. Okay, same thing will happen with the Y direction. So right click, or no, not right click, assign controller. And float limit, basically float is the standard. Float limit. And actually, because we are in dead center, we have to use the same values. So -3 and +3 and -3, sorry. And now we have restriction. So this circle will respect boundaries. Alright, going back to the original state. Here we go. And just for a second, we are almost there to create this controller item, but we have to clarify one thing. We don't want to rotate this. We don't want to accidentally move along the z-axis, because we are, honestly, it's a 2D controller, so we want to move in this 2D space. We will use simple or locks to avoid the accidental moves. So hierarchy panel, link info, and no rotation at all, no scaling at all, and no moving along the z-axis. Okay, so z is the axis that's pointing towards us, so now it's restricted. I can't move it away. I can move many things, but I can't move that particular one. Reset, that's great. Here's the frame. Yes, you can lock this. So if you don't want to make it enabled to rotate, you can lock that. You can still move them if you wish, but it is just pretty fine. Okay, so that is a controller unit. And because it takes some time to create a controller unit like this, I will make a copy. So select the thing, shift and drag, and press OK. I'm not worried about the name, so I had a wrong selection. Let me select everything, shift and drag, and now everything is the same. So I have this restriction. If I'm moving the frame, it will move this particular item. Yes, if I want to make it center, I can go and select the circle and right click, because I'm in parent mode. Alright, if I'm not in parent mode, if I'm in the world mode or view mode, this is what happens. You will see the actual distance from the origin. So this is the origin, this is what it tells us, that how far is it from the origin. Okay, right now I'm not worried about this part. I'm worried about the job. So what I want to do is connect this controller with the job. And the type of controlling is a rotational. So by default, this could be moved with rotation. And the movements of this particular circle will drive the rotation of the jaw. So if I want to open up the jaw, I will drag the joystick. So dragging it down will open up the jaw. Pulling it up will force close the mouth. Turn it to the right will tilt the jaw and slightly rotate. So it will create kind of a chewing effect. So if I'm going left and right, that's kind of a chew. If I'm going down, it's a mouth open. If I'm pulling up, it will be a mouth force close. Okay, let me go back to parent mode and use the reset. Right click and open up the reaction manager. So animation, and from animation we are calling reaction manager, and here we are. Now this is a little bit of it's not complicated, but at first it's confusing, so I try to make it as easy as possible, but it's not happening. So even for me, I have to think it through from time to time. So okay, let me collect the thoughts. What we are doing here is we are defining actions and reactions. An action is taken here. So when you move this joystick, that will be an action, and that action will drive a slave. It will drive and result in a reaction of a slave object. So there will be a master movement, and there will be an answer reaction movement. Now here we are making a trick that we are moving this part, but we are rotating this other one. So we will check the position of this circle and wire it, connect it to the rotation of this item. Okay, so that was the start, but before we are jumping in, please make sure that you have a naming, a proper naming, because otherwise it can be a little bit hard. So this circle 001 will be Fred, FR, CT, RL, like control, and it will be Joe, and like circle or center. Alright, the reason I'm calling this Joe center because I have this outer part, and that will be the frame. Okay, so that will be Joe frame. Okay, so here we go. Which one is the master? The master is this item. But this item has many properties to choose from. So we want to call the information of movement. So the item is selected. We are looking for the transformation, and we are looking for a position. The horizontal position is the X position, the vertical position is the Y position, and we will choose Y, and we will choose a Bezier float. We are not looking for the limits. We know the limits. We adjusted the limits. We are interested in the range of free motion, so that will be our main master. Alright, so now the name appearing here, and it shows us what to choose from. Okay, so this will be the master. Of course we have to add a slave, but we have to clarify what the slave is actually. So the slave is the Joe, but it's not a movement. Again, it is a rotation, but the rotation should be carefully selected, because it has the local information will really tell us the actual orientation of this item. So in the view mode, we have to switch the coordinate, the movement coordinate, to a local. Can you see how it's flipped over? Now this will be a very valuable information. So if I'm zooming in, y-axis is pointing this direction, x-axis is pointing this direction, and z is the opening axis. So z, this one is what will open up the mouth. So I want to tie this particular master to this particular slave action. So master is selected. I want to add a slave to this master. The slave will be this object, the Joe mesh, the transformation of the Joe mesh, the rotation of the Joe mesh, the zero Euler XYZ rotation, and we are looking for the Z axis. I'm afraid it's not visible there, so let me go back and choose again slave, master selected, slave added, select the model, transformation, rotation, zero Euler, and Z axis. Okay, now by default, once these two are connected, we have automatically created a state. A state as a statement. So that means no movement from the master means no movement from the slave. Once you want to create and change the action, then you will change the answer. Then you will update the movement of the Joe. Now, how to make that? Select the center and move it away. Move it in the bottom position along the y-axis, in the bottom. This will be the maximum open of the Joe. So this will be our statement. This is our action. If I'm pressing on create state, it will record the change that I made. This is my action. This is my action in numbers. So in -3, I've transformed this circle. But the answer is opened. If I'm clicking in here and change the value to a 50 degree, 15, now the direction and the orientation is off, so I definitely know now that I have to use a -15. Or if it's not enough, I can use a -25, which one is much stronger, and probably even 40. No, it's too much, I guess. It's a 35, all right? So why do we care about this? Because right now, if you are just starting moving this joystick, the figure will open up the mouth, all right? So here it is. Here's the original state that 0 means 0. -3 means -35 degrees. Okay, so we connected a movement to a rotation, an angular rotation, right? And if you remember, this is why we had to transform and update the pivot point of the Joe, because it plays a huge role in the rigging process. Okay, so let me go back and reset this. Right-clicking here, -3, and now we are back in the 0 position. We still have something else to do. Now, what is that? So we are working on the minus direction, but we still have the opportunity to move on a positive direction, and that will result in a forced close of the mouth. All right, so now it is in a relaxed state, but if you want to close it a little bit with a little bit more force, then we can choose this one. So the action is +3, so it tells us here +3. Why? Because we have parent mode on, so we can read these values. And I don't have to add any more master because this master is already added. So the +3 and the -3 are the same y-axis master movements. The Z rotation is the same, so I don't need to add any new masters, any new slaves. I just have to add another state. So movement action created, create state, now it's +3, and update the answer as 10 degrees. Okay, that's way too much. Maybe 5. Okay. Probably 5 is enough. Let me check how this thing is looking when a mesh is there. So Layer Explorer, and let me open up the mesh and see. Yeah, that is the forced close. Okay, so this is how it works. Now we have this open and we have this forced closed. I think it's too much, so even we just need a 3 degrees, so we don't need a full 5. Yeah, 3 is okay. 3 is okay. So depending on the the phonemes and the lip sync, you can use, or you can coming back and increase it if you wish. All right, now it's almost there, but we still have other controls. Let me close the Layer Explorer, and it's time for us. Oh, sorry, Layer Explorer needed because we don't want to see the mesh. Red mesh turned off. And what we do want is we want to add some tilting movements and rotations on both axes. So going back, resetting it, and because it's a horizontal movement, so Y movement is done, we need a new master because it's a different type of movement of our object here. So new master will be this guy, the movement transformation position, but now X position and limited controller Bezier float. So I'm clicking on, now we have a new master. This new master will drive this model, but now a different axis. So I'm just checking that I'm in local mode. Alright, so to make sure that I'm reading the correct information. And what I'm looking for is the Y-axis. I want to add some side movements, alright? Remember, we are creating now kind of a chewing effect. It looks nice for various facial expressions. So we will drive the Y-axis with our new master. So master is selected. We are adding a slave. The slave will be, it is that center. Okay, so the slave will be this model, transformation, rotation, zero Euler, and now it is Y rotation. Going back to perspective, and by default, the first initial set is created, so we have a 0, 0 value. Now here comes the first action. So item selected, moved to -3. That means this is my action. I want to create a state, and Y-axis will be about 5 degrees. Oh, -5, opposite. -5. Okay. -5. I will be a little bit more aggressive now. -10. Okay. Opposite state, opposite action, creating a new answer. So +3 will result in +10. And here is what we are doing now. So when you're moving this up and down, it will open up. But when you're moving it sideways, it will do like this. Okay? So now we have, when we are in this region of the controller, we are using both axes at the same time. A negative Y-axis value and a negative X-axis value. Okay, this is why we can combine all these things. It's looking promising, but it's still not natural. The reason is because we still can add some tilting movement, alright? Because it's just a basic rotation. Alright, so this is what we are doing. It's a basic rotation, but it's anatomically it's not that believable. So what we will do is we're going back and reset it again. Just make sure that nothing is changed too much. And the master will be the same. So the master is the horizontal movement. We are just connecting another slave. So right now, this master will drive two slaves at the same time. So master selected, adding a new slave. The first one was the Z-axis. Right now it was the Y-axis, and we will add the X-axis for this time. So add a slave. This model, transformation, rotation, zero Euler, and X-axis. Okay, what it makes, now we have another initial state, that's number 4 here, and 0, 0, nothing happens. But when I'm moving to the negative and record my new state, that's when I'm in the -3, I will add the X rotation a slight 5, no, -5. -5. Okay, when I'm moving the opposite, I will create a new state, and that will be a 5. And what happens when I'm moving sideways, it is rotating and tilting at the same time, so that way you can just really do this kind of a chewing effect. It's great when you have a weird accent in the lip sync, so you can add many personal touches to the talk and the expression of the figure. Alright, now we're going back, reset it, and look for the eyes, or look for the other parts as well. Okay, so let me go back to the mesh, and right now I don't want to see the bones, so let me close the bones. I don't want to see the controllers. Okay, we are working on the default layer. This is the active default layer, and we want to create and add some morphs. Alright, so after the jaw movements, we can work on the morph joystick for the mouth regarding to smile and sadness. So we will combine these here. Now let me move the frame a little bit closer to the head, so it will be a little bit easier to pick up things. Go to perspective and rename these guys. So we will start with that. The naming convention is the following. So I will pick this and add a name. Now this will be mouth center. Mouth. Copy. And this will be mouth frame. Frame. Linking and everything is done already, so I don't have to worry about that much. Go up and look for nut wire, but it's quite similar. Reaction manager. We have some reactions already. This is from the previous part. But right now we will add a new master. A new master for the smile and the morph and everything. So what else? Add a master. This item will be added as a master. Transformation, position, Y position, so up and down, and limited control Bezier float. So that's what we have. This master will drive one smile and one sadness. So the upward movement will make the right side smiling. The downward movement will make the right side be sad. So slave will be the first slave, will be the figure, the body, the modified object, the modified object, the morpher modified object, and the smile R target. By default, we have a generic state that tells us that the 0 position will result in the 0 effect and reaction. So I have to go to parent mode, because you know this is a way I can reset it. And when I'm pulling this up, I want this morph to be visible. So here we go. This is the action. When the action is performed, please do a change and update the morph value to 100%. So from 0 to this 100%, the morph is performed. But if we're going to the opposite direction, I want to have that sad expression. So for this reason, I'm right-clicking on here to make a reset. Need no new master, so the master will be the same, it's just opposite direction. But the new master needs a new slave, and that will be the body, modified object, modified object, morpher, and set R. So that's number 3. And state is created, so state number 3 is actually our initial state where everything is 0. But when I'm performing this movement to the bottom, I want to add an action. And this action will tell us that the set R target should be 100%. So when I'm moving up, it will be happy. When I'm moving it down, it will be sad. We will organize the other side, the left side, on the x-axis. So we were working along the y-axis. Let me go back, reset it, and adding a new master because it's a different type of movement. So transformation, position, X position, and limited control Bezier float. That is the horizontal axis. New master needs new slaves. So new slave will be this particular model, modified object, a morpher, and smile left. By default, we have the reset basic values, so everything is 0, 0, nothing is happening. Time to take action, move it to the upper positive direction of the x-axis, and then when this one is performed, we want to have the reaction. So number 3, we have a reaction of smile L changed to 100%. So that's fine now. If we want to move forward, what we have to do, we need to reset this guy going back to the center, and we need a new slave for this particular master. So master selected again, add a new slave, model is going, modified object, morpher, and set left. So 0, 0 state. What happens when we are turning this to the -3? We want an action, so we are creating a new state, and the set L left needs to be at 100%. Okay, so this is what happens. We have a horizontal drive, so it's smiling and it's sad. And we have, when we are resetting this, we have a vertical one that's on the other side. The biggest deal with this is when we are performing across a diagonal movement. So top right corner, everybody's smiling. Okay, so now we have this smile. Top bottom, everybody's sad. The biggest trick is you can actually change these sides, or you can make it asymmetrical, so you can drive it towards to the right side a little bit better, or towards to the left side a little bit better, and then moving up. So you can really play with this. Now the big deal is you have to only animate this guy. You don't need to animate the morphs within the morpher modifier. You don't have to deal with the 4 different values. You can have one single item and you can combine all these movements. Okay, so that's a good way to control things. Now if you want to make it a little bit smoother, what you can do is you could actually select the items and soften the movements a little bit up. So here's the smile R target. This is 0. This is where something is happening. You can press a right click and click on Bezier Smooth, and now we have a smooth transition into this. We can also add the transition here. So select and Bezier corner, maybe adjust it here. So that means when we are playing with that, it will be a little bit softer. Okay, so that's the goal here, to change these values, to soften them up a little bit. So here we go, select and Bezier Smooth, and Bezier corner. This point is a corner point, it has no other end. Moving this down, so we can create this transitional changes to make it a little bit softer as we are updating. Alright, so that's it. This is how we can manage and create the controllers. So now we have this Smile controller. We also have the Joe controller. So it's a good combination that you can use. Alright, so thank you very much and see you next time. Goodbye.